Okay, now we're good, all right. Good evening, everyone. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda for the business meeting of tonight, January 12th.
Jim?
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, we have an accolade, and we have Kendall Fritz, who is going to be discussing the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program. So please, come on down.
Good evening, everybody. Now I'm on. All right. I am excited to be here tonight to represent GCS in my role as the IB coordinator and to express our pride in 3 students from the class of 2025. These students fulfilled requirements for the full International Baccalaureate Diploma, and we are incredibly proud to recognize Nicholas Lucci, Lane Sutton, and Anthony Zhang. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the requirements of the full diploma, it is important to note that it is the most rigorous program we offer. In 11th and 12th grade, their entire schedule consists of college-level IB classes. In addition to their coursework, they are also expected to write a 4,000-word essay, multiple research papers, and even participate in community service, in addition to the requirement that other students have. These students chose a pathway that they knew would come with sacrifice and an increased workload, but also the opportunity to learn and with varying perspectives and a focus on growth through more than just their academics. My hope is that they left GCS feeling prepared and balanced with an understanding of their own personal learning. I know that I don't just speak for myself when I express my pride in the accomplishments of these students. Nicholas Lucci is currently attending Endicott College and had hoped to be here, but he's not feeling well tonight. Anthony Zhang is at Columbia University, and he also couldn't be here tonight. Lane Sutton is studying at the University at Albany, and I roped him into coming tonight. So Lane is here in person to accept his diploma tonight, and I did just want to say a few words about him. First of all, Lane deciding to pursue the full diploma was a surprise to me. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but he wasn't necessarily on my radar from 9th and 10th grade as one of those typical, yep, I'm gonna hunt this kid down, I'm gonna talk to them about the IB, but it was clear to all of his teachers that he had potential and he himself had a personal drive to challenge himself. He would be my perfect example of a critical thinker, someone who doesn't just answer a question, but thoughtfully and meticulously defines the question before he's ready to give an answer. And that answer is probably going to be exactly what you were looking for. This type of thinking is exactly what the IB is all about. So after our first or second meeting together, it was clear that he was a great fit for this pathway. Over the next 2 years of working with Lane, I would get to know an avid history buff. I would see him shine at elementary school science night. I would watch him assist students at the IT help desk right here, most days. And I would also see him teach himself a digital art program so that he could submit his work for the IB art class his way. Completely self-taught, we had no idea how to support him in that endeavor, and he figured it out. He challenged the IB math curriculum despite not being accelerated in middle school, and he successfully earned himself the IB diploma. If it's not obvious enough, I'm very proud of Lane. So congratulations to all of the full diploma recipients of the class of 2025, but Lane, since you're here, please come up and accept your International Baccalaureate Diploma.
One more.
It's not yours yet. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, come on up, we're gonna ask questions. What did you think of the IB program?
I definitely found the IB program to be difficult, but I found it to be very rewarding as well. It's given me a lot of credits at my institution, a lot of like experience in the higher level of learning that's required at college institutions. It's really helped me throughout my first year.
Anyone else? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I think you kind of answered it. I was wondering, did you see it directly applicable for when you went to school? Was there a lot of overlap, and was there anything that you thought was particularly helpful, or anything that you wish was more helpful, just for constructive criticism, either way?
I found the essay writing style of the IB to be more applicable to college level writing than AP, for example, because it's more research papers and stuff that you'll actually be using in college, whereas I feel like AP is applicable, but more in an AP setting, which I found to be very helpful. A lot of essay writing in college.
Any other, go ahead.
Well, I do understand the IB diploma and so forth. Both my kids went through IB, and one got the diploma and one only the certificates. So I'm very proud that you went through and got the diploma. I think it's of value and so forth. I hope that you are as successful as my kids have been in finding your own path in your future. You're off to a great start. You may not know it yet, but you are off to a great start.
Thank you.
If I could just add, Lane, I got to tell you, one of the great things about being in Greenville is the fact that we offer this program to students. And Ms. Fritz, thank you for your leadership there. But I got to tell you, it gives me great pride and joy to see the kids that get through this program, and you know, very proud to say I'm from Greenville, but even more ecstatic by what you can mean to this community and to others that are going through Greenville. Because again, I think that it's a wonderful opportunity. You took that challenge on, and I'm just very proud of you and your classmates for achieving this honor. Great job.
Thank you. Were there any other questions?
No, just congratulations, well done.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move us on to the open forum. Facilitate public access to meetings of the Board of Education and to provide an opportunity for public comment at these meetings. Accordingly, the open forum provides an opportunity for members of the public to share thoughts about topics on the agenda. An individual's comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. Additional comments may be emailed to the district clerk, Daphne Pearson, using the email pearsond@greenvillecsd.org. In order for an email to be read during the meeting, it must be received by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting and state that the email is to be read out loud. Emails shall be limited to 600 words. Please note that this is not the time to register complaints that need to be addressed confidentially through the proper channels. Remarks that might be considered defamatory, obscene, profane, stigmatizing, or otherwise impermissible in public forums are prohibited and will be declared out of order. Board members actively listen during open forum, but may not immediately respond to comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Approach the podium, state your name, and just turn on the mic, and the mic is more for the recording. There's a worker.
Hi, I'm Maya Rivera. I actually used to go to Greenville for elementary school, middle school, and now I go to Tech Valley. And I'm here to ask you guys to continue funding for students in middle school and 8th grade to continue going to Tech Valley up in Albany. And I just, because me personally, I've had a very great time at Tech Valley. And one of the many projects that we have is to attend a school board meeting and ask our school district to continue funding to go, for students to go to Tech Valley. And I would just like to talk about The reasons why I think you should. First, I heard about Tech Valley from my sister Olivia. She is my oldest. She graduated Tech Valley in 2018. She started high school in 2015. And at that time, I was in elementary school. And I remember being like, oh, this is the high school I really want to go to, because it felt like something very new. It was something so interesting, and I'll get into that. I've grown very academically and personally. We have a thing called project-based learning, and in this there's a project in every class, and you have teammates, and this helps you with the real world. This helps you work with teammates. This helps you like really connect and be a leader, and I think that's super important. I think like getting you ready for the real world, that is super important to be able to work with people, and being at Tech Valley has really helped me do that. And as well as we get these amazing career opportunities. We have this thing called iTerm. Every February, all throughout high school, we get to do a week or two of learning about a career that we wish to. So first and second year, you just make different kinds of presentations, and then in your junior and senior year, you actually get out and get to basically shadow and be an intern at whatever career you can. You know, I had this super interesting career opportunity. I was a clown last year for my intern, and it was the greatest thing ever. I know it's a little unconventional and a little silly, but it was my favorite thing in the whole world at the time. I got to clown at hospitals. I got to clown at nursing homes. I made, like, feeling that, like being able to make people feel better, like just, it unlocked something that, as I do no longer wish to be a professional clown, it did give me the opportunity to really hone in the fact that I would love to do something with other people. I would love to be able to cheer people up. And actually for my next iTerm this year, as a senior, we get to do 2 weeks, and I'm hoping to be sort of like assistant teacher down at the elementary school, because when you remember you have a favorite teacher, you remember that favorite teacher. I would love to be that teacher as a student someday. My plans after high school, not 100% sure. I think not everybody knows what they want to do, even in high school, out of high school, when you're 30. But I really do want to start at community college. I would love to start in child development. I would love to go in for teaching. And I really hope that whatever I choose to do in the future, I think whatever I will do in the future will really reflect on how I learned everything I did at Tech Valley. And I super encourage this board to continue funding all the students that you can to go to Tech Valley. It is a super important learning opportunity, I think, for whoever gets it. And that is my time. Thank you.
Don't forget to thank the people where you stand, Greenville.
Thank you. Thank you for Greenville giving me a start.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for coming and being a part of this and talking about your experience, because as we get into the budget season, it's awfully important, and it's good for the board and the folks in Greenville to hear of your experiences. I got to tell you, just based on your presentation tonight, you will make people happy. You will have an effect on them. So keep going in that direction. I was 30 before I figured out what I was going to do. So don't hurry. Congratulations and thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? And just officially, Brenda, if you would state your name for the record.
Absolutely. My name is Brenda Schultes, and I am speaking to you this evening on behalf of members of the Greenville Faculty Association. I wanted to address comments that had been made at the November 17th Board of Ed meeting with regards to the FFA and their supposed lack of support and for the New York National FFA candidate Hunter Smigel and former Greenville Central School student. At that meeting, it was stated that the FFA had not shown support for Hunter. Upon some research, I have determined that Hunter had been encouraged by the club advisors to run for national office for many years. In support for Hunter, videos were created to help encourage him through the rigorous selection process. Additionally, advisors composed a book of letters and pictures of support to help encourage him through the final push of his candidacy. A live link was posted for the convention in order to view the announcement of the national officers. So even though the Greenville FFA was not in attendance at this year's convention, this individual was definitely supported by the Greenville FFA. Additionally, it was mentioned at the November meeting that the Board of Ed had voted to approve the expense for an overnight trip for members to attend the convention. At the meeting in November, some of the comments that were made actually made me think that there was a question about possibly the abuse of funds. Again, I've gathered some information for clarification regarding this concern. Typically, the FFA only utilizes the district funding when supporting a student or students who are actually competing in a contest at the convention. One student this year was eligible to compete, but did not submit an application and did not attend. Students who are not competing would have to pay their way in order to attend. None of the students elected to do that this year. As a result, the funds set aside and approved by the Board of Ed vote were not utilized. To reiterate, there was not an abuse of funds by this club. In the future, I hope that if there are concerns regarding faculty or staff, you may certainly reach out to Mr. Bennett, the superintendent, or myself. I typically sit over in that area during Board of Ed meetings. I would be happy to gather any information that you would require rather than publicly sharing concerns without some of the critical background information. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Do we have any emails?
We do not.
Okay, then thank you. I'm going to move us along. All right, let's see. Tonight we have the public hearing, senior citizens tax exemption and persons with disabilities and limited income tax exemption. And the public hearing that was necessary due to the increase in income limits for the 2026 approved by the Greene County on December 17th, 2025. And senior citizens living in Greenville Central School District who are 65 years or older are eligible to these reductions in school taxes if their income level is $45,399.99 or lower. District residents with a disability whose income is limited by such a disability will be eligible for these reductions in school taxes if their income level is also $45,399.99 or lower. The scale was adopted by the Greene County on December 17, 2025. So anyone who is eligible for this exemption must contact their local assessor's office in the township in which they live prior to the deadline for the filing on March 1st, 2026. So this is a public hearing. Is there anyone that wants to speak or? Okay, so then we will conclude the public hearing. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move us on to our presentations. And this is the rollover budget. I'm going to turn it over to Todd Hilgendorf, the Assistant Superintendent for Business. So drum roll, please.
I'm going to steal a little of your drum roll.
All right, so before that, we'll have
No, I've got a very limited part. This is Todd's show and his crew. So, but no, again, as we go through the budget process, each stage, I just want to continually go back to when we think about budget, we think of numbers and we think of salaries and we think of expenses and things like that. But it's really rooted in and around what our district mission and goals are. When we start to take a look at the budget, and again, it's pretty much a year-round process, but it really does heat up in October and early November. We focus on curriculum, we focus on our culture, and we focus on community, because those are the three things that matter the most to the district, to the buildings, to our kids and our families. So when we always keep that as our starting point when we get into this process. So just keep that in the back of mind. The leadership team spends a lot of time together. Maybe sometimes too much time, but we really do hash through and talk about a lot of these issues that are important to our kids and our programs and to our community and being fiscally responsible. So with all that said, we'll now over to Tom.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Bennett. So as was stated, we're here tonight to look at the rollover budget. Before we get into the specifics of the rollover budget for 26-27, some of the similar slides that hopefully look familiar to you that kind of set the stage for each of our budget meetings. So first of all, tonight, in terms of handouts, because there's always handouts that go along with budget presentations, tonight is on the lighter side. So it's really just the slide deck that we're looking at tonight up on the screen. This is always posted on board docs, and it will also be on the budget website as well as of tomorrow. So it's the slide documents. And then the other document that I'm going to refer to tonight a couple of times is the budget handbook that was given out back in December. So think of that as like your budgeting 101 handbook that has a lot of information about the budgeting process overall, terms and definitions, processes. So that's referenced a couple times tonight as well. So if you don't have a new copy of that, but that handbook is a good tool and resource throughout the process. So the first slide that's up here tonight is our budget timeline. Always like to start with this to give us an idea of where are we in the process and kind of what's happened since the last meeting and what's kind of in the works right now. So if you look at the month of January, which on this slide is kind of in that dark black color, you'll see there's a lot of different boxes that hit that month. And we're not going to go through every one of them, but just to touch on a couple of them. One is that rollover budget that we're looking at tonight and I'm presenting on, but the work for that actually started back in November in my office. Tonight is the completion of that, to look at it overall with you as a board. The other important item that I want to point out is that budgeting overall at Greenville is a very collaborative process. So we do work to make sure that we're collecting ideas and feedback and concerns from all areas of our district. So that really happens through requests going to supervisors and building administrators, and then working together to put together their building and department requests. So that happens in October, November, and December. At this time, Mr. Ben and I have started our meetings with those building administrators to walk through those requests. And I've also met with our department supervisors for transportation and building the grounds to do that same thing. So a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into the rollover budget, but then also more details that get piled onto that, which will be the February presentation for program, and then the March presentation for capital and administrative. The last item to touch on is during the month of January, I also start to work on what's called the tax cap. So the absolute maximum that we can go out at for a tax levy increase is based on that tax cap. So there's a formula that's put out by New York State. We put a lot of information into that formula, and it tells us here is the maximum amount or percentage that we can go out for a budget vote. So that happens, or starts to happen in January. It doesn't get finalized really until February, and then into March it's submitted to the state. Again, January, very busy month, a lot of different pieces starting to come together. At the same time, it's still a little early in the overall budget process. A lot of things to be worked out and refined between now and the budget vote in May. So that's timeline. Another area or another slide to look at is thinking about some of the major decision points. So tonight, again, we're talking about the rollover budget. We are not talking about these three big decision points, but I think it's important to remember that as we get into the more detailed parts of building the budget, these are kind of three big areas that we have to make decisions on. So starting over on the right, because it goes along with what I was just talking about, is figuring out what is the maximum tax cap, and then what does the board feel comfortable with within that maximum. Do you want to go right to the max? Do you want to stay under the max? As a reminder, if we went over the max, it requires a supermajority vote from the voters, so we often avoid that. But tax cap and setting that and figuring out what we want to go out as a levy is a major decision point in the process. Over on the left-hand side, another major decision point is thinking about our programs and our staffing. So you'll see tonight and some slides later on, the vast majority of our budget, a significant majority of the budget, comes from salaries and benefits. So it's important for us to always be thinking about our overall, across the entire district, what are the programs we offer and what are the staffing requirements to maintain those programs. And then the third one down on the bottom, the use of fund balance and reserves. This will really become critically important when we get into March and into April, thinking about how do we make sure that we balance the revenues with the expenditures that we're looking to have for next year's budget. How do we use our fund balances? How do we use our reserves to make that happen? And one last slide, just setting the stage, is the budget formula that I'd like to refer to because this walks us through the process from start to finish. We are starting tonight all the way over on the left-hand side with that rollover budget. And then really as we go through the next couple of board meetings, the February and March meeting, we get additional information. We talk about budget priorities. We talk about modifications to that budget and what it all comes together as the request for next year's budget. And then we also look at how do we fund that with the revenues and fund balance and reserves all the way on the right-hand side. All that goes together into that formula, and out comes our proposed budget, what will go up for voters in May. All right. So before we look at this year's rollover for 26-27, always like to look a little back in time, just so you have an idea or reminder of where the budget has been for the past 2 years. So last year and then this current year. So this slide shows the total budget on the top. This means the total amount of expenditures that were in the budget for 24-25, last academic year. And that was just under $36 million at $35,986. So that budget from the year prior to that was an increase of $1,758,600. So roughly $1.7 million. So this is just good to kind of get in your mind of for this year, the 24-25 year, it was an increase of about $1.7 million from one year to the next. And that was a percentage increase of 5.14. The bottom half of this slide talks about the tax levy. So as I just mentioned before, that's one of those big decision points, what the tax cap will be and how much we will collect for taxes. So one of the main areas of revenue is our collection of taxes. So the bottom half of this slide is for last year, the tax levy was $18,642,000. So roughly half of our overall expenditures were funded by the tax levy. From the year prior to that, to this year, it was an increase of about $454,000, which was a 2.5% increase. So this is a good foundational slide because these are two big numbers that we talk about. We talk about the overall budget on the expenditure side and what the increase is, and then we talk about the tax levy, the amount we collect in taxes from taxpayers, and what the increase is there. Right? Those numbers are not the same. It's two different pieces.
Todd, can you just quickly explain kind of where the rest of it comes from?
Absolutely. So the majority of the rest of the revenue, which you'll see in the revenue presentation that doesn't happen until March, but we'll give little previews tonight and again in February. The other main category is state aid. There's some other areas in there too, interest earnings, tuition for students that come from other districts to us, but the two main categories are tax levy and state aid. So again, this slide was for last year, 24-25. Looking at this current year, again, same breakdown of the slide. On the top half is the overall expenditures for the year. So for 25-26, this current year that we're in, it's $37,600,000, so $37.6 million budget. That was an increase of $1.6 million and a percentage increase of 4.61. And on the tax levy side, $18.9 million, actually just under $19 million total, an increase of $341,000, and a percentage increase of 1.83. If you remember, that 1.83 was on the lower side. Our tax cap calculation last year came in at 1.83. That was the highest that we could go based on the formula. But overall, that is a low number, right? That's a low percentage increase for taxes overall. Different way of looking at that, just graphically, this shows over the past 5 years, including this current year, where the overall expenditures, so the total budget, what we expense each year from 2021-22 all the way up through this current year. So you can see there were some years lower percentage increases. The past 2 years have been a little higher, 5.14% and 4.61%. And then same idea, but this is looking at the tax levy, so the amount that we collected from our communities in taxes. Again, over the past 5 years, you can see where, as I just mentioned, that percentage increase last year at 1.83 was certainly lower than the 3 years prior to that. So that sets the stage of kind of the overall budget process and a little history of the past 2 years. So now let's get into the actual rollover budget, looking forward to 26-27, into next year's budget. A quick note on the bottom of this slide, you'll see where it says Budget Handbook page 1, and there's a link. So if you're digitally looking at this slide deck and you want some additional information on kind of the definition and the overall work that goes into rollover budget, that's where you can find it. It's on the very first page of that budget handbook. But up here on this slide is a breakdown of the work that goes into taking this current year, 25-26 budget, and projecting, rolling it over into 26-27. So it's literally rolling all the expenses from this current year into next year based on what is known. So I will say this a couple of times between now and when we finish up tonight. The rollover budget is our best idea at this time to project into next year. With that said, literally every day from now, really until April, I'm updating this. Information comes in, whether it's an expense or a revenue, additional information is constantly coming in. This gets updated, adjusted, and tweaked. So right now, this is the best projection we have. Next week, the projection will be better, because I need some information that has refined some area of the budget. The main areas that we focus on for the rollover are listed here. So the first one is salaries. So this is one that's actually a little challenging this year because across the district, our contracts with employees are currently set to expire at the end of this academic year, 25-26. So when we go to project those salaries for next year, we're doing the best with what the information is that we have in the current contracts to project what those salaries will be next year. But in reality, we won't know the hard, firm numbers of what those salaries will be until contracts are settled. So this is one, again, making our best projection, what we think, but it will definitely change between now and when everything is all finalized. But salaries is a big piece of increasing from one year to the next for a rollover budget. Then under employee benefits. So part of employee benefits are the New York State retirement systems. We work with 2 different retirement systems. One is Employee Retirement System, ERS, which are it's our support staff primarily. And then we also work with teachers' retirement systems, so everybody on the instructional side. So teachers, TAs, administrators all fall on the TRS side. These are rates that are increases that we get from the state. We don't have control over this, we don't have say in this. This is the retirement systems for the state telling us at this time they're projecting that the average rate of increase for ERS will go up by 17.6%. Sorry, it won't go up by that, but the average rate for next year will be 17.6. For New York State teachers' retirement, it's somewhere between 8.25 and 8.75. So that's additional funds that the district has to pay into or for these retirement systems. Also on the benefit side, insurance costs. If you remember last year, we had a decent amount of conversation around health insurance. I guess that that will be the same this year. I predict that will be similar this year. Right now, what we've done is we've projected, or we're using the number of 15%, because that's what the increase was from last year to this current year. So hopefully, it actually comes in lower than that, but because that was the current increase from last year to this year, we felt that it was appropriate to use that number to project for next year as well. So it's 15% for the health insurance, and it's 5% for the prescription drug plans. And then also on the insurance costs is liability, automobile, the other insurance plans that we have as a district. Those rates always go up. Our insurance broker gives us estimates at this time. Those estimates, it's another one of those areas that it will certainly be updated and changed before we actually start paying those bills in July. But the estimated numbers we have as of right now. And then two other areas on the bottom there, BOCE services. So this includes programs that we send students to. So CTE courses, career technical education courses, that students go to those programs. It could also be services that we purchase. Sometimes it's a computer program that we're able to purchase through BOCES. So it's a computer program, or it's other services that we purchase from BOCES. At this time in the rollover, we use just a flat 3% increase to project what we think those will be next year. And this is another one that throughout really February, I get the actual rates. Here for this software, this is the actual cost for next year that we can tell you. So those numbers, some will come in a little higher than 3, some will come in a little lower, but overall we use 3% as a good estimate to project. And then the last bullet, debt service. So debt service is referring to the payments that we have to make on any money that we have previously borrowed. So those are interest payments and principal payments. And it's either for a previous capital project or construction work, or it's for a bus purchase that we've previously completed, and now we are paying for that over time through a bond. For debt service, we know for the money that we previously borrowed, we get the amortization schedule. It tells us for every year that we have to pay that money back, the exact amount that we have to pay. The one that's a little less known is for a bus purchase for next year. We estimate what the interest will be for the amount that we're going to borrow for that. But everything else in debt service is a pretty solid, firm number. Everything up there, that's the one that is pretty solid already at this point.
So Todd, I had a question. I understand that the retirement system numbers are provided to us by New York State. Do they provide any additional information? Because the increase between the employees' retirement system is more than double the teachers. Do they say why or provide any type of background?
I'm sure that information exists. What I get is just the projected rate increase, or the projected rates for next year is what I pay attention to. Could I look and get some additional information? And absolutely see what I can find, yes. Part of it is 2 separate systems. So it's just how that system is doing overall, like people that are smarter than me in that area and know how to use formulas and amortization schedule, all that. You know, they're predicting what the markets are going to do next year and how that retirement system is going to weather either good or bad in the markets. All that to say, we get a rate.
Or perhaps what some of the demographics are showing, if they have more individuals that might be retiring, you know, in the short term, then they're going to have to bump up. Okay, I was just wondering if you had any additional flavor.
I mean, the other, again, I can certainly look and get some information to provide to the board. The overall systems, ERS, Employee Retirement System, is a larger system overall. So it's state employees across the state that are all in Employee Retirement System. Total numbers, I don't know, but I can tell you that it's a larger system. Teachers, retirement system, it's just teachers. It's anybody on the instructional side. Yes, that's a lot of people across New York State, but nowhere near the number of employees that are state employees across the state. But I can do a little homework and find some information. Any other questions on this slide? So again, a little look back. When we sat here last year in January, and I was presenting the 25-26 rollover for what would become the current school year, But sitting here last year at this time, we were looking at an increase of just over $2 million, and that was a percentage increase of 5.73. So a snapshot from last year at this time. I'm going to add to this, because there's something that was unique about the rollover last year at this time for this current year's budget, and it had to do with the capital project. So while this number last year seemed like a large number of a $2 million increase, about $680,000 of that was offset because we knew we were going to be getting additional building aid because we were finishing up the capital project that we finished this past year, and the aid was going to start flowing for that project. What that means is we had borrowed money, we had bonds, we were starting to pay those bonds back, the project was finished. It means we start to get building aid. So in New York State, for every project, as long as you follow all the rules of the state, you get aid back for projects that you complete. So we completed that project. In this current year, we got approximately $680,000 additional in our building aid because of that project. So last year, sitting here at this time, I was saying, hey, $2 million, yes, it's a large number, but a good portion of that will actually be offset by an increase in revenue. Sitting here now, projecting for 26-27, there is not a comparison to that. There's not a big project that's ending. There's not some other area of state aid that we know is going to increase in the same way that building aid increased for this current year. So that's kind of like, should put it as a little asterisk and note on the bottom of the slide. But just again, comparing year to year, last year at this time, we had about a $2 million increase, 5.73%. So taking all the information that I shared on that other slide of what goes into a rollover budget and projecting to the best of our ability at this time, for next year, we're looking at a $39,588,722 budget. So that's the expenditure, what we would expense as a district next year, which is an increase of just over 1.9 million, or a percentage increase of 5.17. So total increase is similar to last year. It's that other piece of the revenue that we're not going to get into detail tonight because that gets more refined and I'll have more information really in a month and certainly by March. But because it is a difference from this current year to next year, I just thought it was important to note that building aid piece.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
For the building aid, is that a one-time aid that you get just because of that one-time completion of the project? That'll be ongoing because that building exists now?
It's
Or
ongoing.
that improvement exists?
It's ongoing. Think of it as the length of the time that we structure the bond that we pay off the money is the same time that we're getting the additional aid from the state. So we work with fiscal advisors that help us plan all of the projects out so that what we want ultimately is we want our debt service to be flat, right? So as we call old debt, like if an old project that we did 20 years ago, we finished paying it off, so our debt service would drop down. Nope, we always have projects, we always have work that needs to be done. We want to do another one so that that debt service line just stays flat. But the short answer is, it's not just a one-time payment, it's an ongoing building aid payment while we're paying off the bonds for that project.
What is the bond timeline?
I don't know the total number.
It's not a year or 2 years, it's
No.
extended.
It's extended,
Usually
yes.
10,
I think it's 15,
Okay.
but don't quote me. I
No,
can.
that's okay, that's okay, just as an idea.
Multi-year.
To understand.
It's
Yeah,
multi-year,
yeah.
yes.
Multi-year.
All right. So with the rollover budget, we're going to look at it in what's called the three-part budget components. So this is actually a requirement by New York State for school districts to take all of the expenses and categorize them and break them down into these three components: the administrative, the capital, and the program. So we actually organize our budget presentations around this. So the February board meeting is the program component, and then the March budget presentation is the capital and administrative component. So we organize our presentations around this. I'm not going to go through these lists bullet by bullet, but just so you have an idea, administrative is the salaries and benefits of our administrators, most administrators across the district. Other things like school board costs, legal costs are in there, our administrative fees for BOCEs that we have to pay BOCEs, those are the items that fall under the administrative. Capital, it's salaries and benefits for our buildings and ground staff. It's bus purchases, and then it's the things that we do to keep our facilities running. So paying the electric bill, that's part of the capital. And then last but not least is program. Program is the largest of the three. This includes all of the salaries and benefits for all of our staff delivering pupil services. So from our teachers to our counselors to our teacher aides to all the support staff, everybody that interacts with students every day on the instructional side, in terms of teachers, TAs, support staff, they all fall under program. And then this is also where all of our purchases for school supplies and textbooks and equipment for classrooms all falls under program. Again, here on the bottom left, it has a link to the budget handbook. So pages 12 through 16 have some additional details about this three-part component budget and how it's broken down. So for each one of these, we're going to look at a breakdown of the cost overall for administrative. I'm going to go through these a little quick because I'm going to look at it in a different way that I think is a little easier to explain for the rollover budget, to talk about the actual increases, and there's one decrease, but the overall increases. But for each of these, we'll just look overall high level. So for the administrative component, the line across the bottom has an overall increase of $105,000 or 2.79%. Okay. On the left, not going to read all these things, but you can see all the different components that make up the different areas of the administrative component. This is where, when we have the individual presentations in February and March, we get into more detail. For tonight, kind of just that high level, administrative is increasing 2.79%. And then the capital and program, same idea, the bottom line for each one. Capital is increasing $279,000 or 4.51%. And then program, bottom line, is increasing $1.5 million or 5.63%. When we put those onto a pie chart, just to see how much each one of those makes up of the total, sorry, the colors on this are not the best up there. But point here is that program, when you break the budget into these three components, the program component is by far the most significant chunk of the pie. So just about 74% goes to the program component. 16.37 goes to the capital, and 9.79 goes to the administrative. A different way of breaking down the budget. So this is not the three-part component. This is going back to taking all the expenditures in the district for the rollover budget for 26-27 and breaking them down in this way, so into just 6 different categories. And this is where I think it's a little easier to explain some of the high level, what we're looking at and what we're projecting for 26-27. So on this slide, I'll actually go line by line and talk a little bit about each one so you have an idea. So is where the three-part component breaks salaries and benefits into different groupings. This is every single salary and benefit for all employees for the entire district, all in one place. So when you look at just salaries and benefits, so that goes back to what I was saying, is projecting salaries the best we can, and projecting benefits, which the big increase would be the health insurance. You put that all together, it's an increase of just over $1.3 million. So right there in salaries and benefits, that's a significant increase from one year to the next, just in that one line. But that makes up the biggest portion of our budget overall. So that's a just under 5% change from one year to the next. The next line down, contractual services and tuition. There's a lot of different pieces that go into that line. What makes up the increase, which is $468,000 from one year to the next, that increase is made up of 2 main areas. One, on the lower side, is our liability insurance. Insurance that we have as a district for our campus, for events that happen, all the different pieces that go in with liability insurance. those rates increase year to year. So that's in that line. The other one that is more significant is an increased need of students who are in specialized placements. So when we talk about special ed programming and students that have individual education plans, IEPs, these are students who have programs that are not here at Greenville, but are somewhere else. They are private placements that students are attending for their services. There has been an increase in those costs, and that increases that number, part of that 468. BOE services, as I mentioned earlier, we use a 3% increase across the board. However, at the same time, there are actually some decreases in special ed services that are Questar related or BOCES related. So we know that that number is going to come down next year. But overall, we're projecting BOCES services an increase of $47,706, which is 1.54%. Next line down is debt service. So this is where I was saying this number of all of them is probably the firmest number at this point in the process. This number is increasing 160,000, but that was a planned increase, and it's specifically for a bus purchase. So, not to go too far into another category, but when the state came out with the requirement of shifting to EV buses, going back a few years, we made a decision at Greenville to buy as many diesel buses in our replacement plan as we could prior to the start of EV buses. So what that did was it increased some of our costs for purchasing of buses over the past couple of years. So that $160,000 increase in that area is specifically a result of that. We purchased buses in this current year that now next year we will have bond payments to pay on those buses.
And Todd, if I could just ask a question, the state has come out with the waiver form for the EV buses. Can you just mention something on that?
Absolutely. So, can I say that? We'll talk about it at the end. I'll come back to it rather than going. We can go down a rabbit hole, but we'll finish this first and then cycle back.
Okay.
So that's debt service. Interfund transfer to federal/food service. Key point here is it's zero. There's no increase. I also want to add to that, the $76,000 that is budgeted there is transferred to federal. It means it's transferred to our federal fund and it pays for summer special ed programming. We pick up a portion of that bill. The state picks up the other portion. That amount we can see staying consistent from this current year to next year. But as a positive good note, I also always like to put in there, this says food service, but in recent years we have not needed to transfer any money to food service because our food service program has been doing really well and they're able to sustain themselves without funds coming from the district or coming from general fund. So that's also why that number is zero. And then last but not least, a negative number. That's always nice to see in a rollover. The last one is a negative, and this is under equipment, materials, and supplies. It's specifically a negative because for this current year, we purchased a bus lift for our bus garage. That was a one-time purchase that we planned to have as a one-time purchase in this current year. It was about $58,000, so when you take that out of the budget for next year, the overall equipment line comes down. So it's nice to see a negative, even if it's not a large negative. So across the bottom, that's the same number that I showed earlier, the total increase of just over $1.9 million, or an increase of 5.17%. Putting that into a pie chart, because I love myself a good graph. Again, colors aren't the best up there, I apologize for that, but just to see overall in a pie chart how these different categories break down. The largest piece of the pie up there is salaries and benefits, 70.38%. And then you can see the others. I don't have to touch on each one, but you can see those other components that make up smaller portions of that pie. But overall, we are a learning organization that depends on people, right? We can't function as a school without all the people that are here doing the amazing work that they do every single day. So obviously, our biggest expense is going to be, and will always be, on that salaries and benefits side. Okay, so some key takeaways. Hopefully you've kind of got the gist of this tonight, but the rollover budget is a starting point for the 26-27 budget. Nothing is finalized really at this point in the process. It really is just the starting point. Many adjustments and refinements, as I've mentioned a couple times tonight. Those will be continue to update into the budget overall, and we will be back in February with another presentation that has additional information. And then the last kind of key takeaway that I wanted to mention for folks to leave with tonight are some of the different variables that I touched on. On the expenditure side, it's the contract negotiations. So it's a challenge to project exact salaries until all those negotiations are completed. So that's an area we're going to be aware of and keep an eye on. And then on the revenue side, I kind of mentioned this last time, didn't mention it again tonight, but I think it's important to state it again here tonight, is on the revenue side, it will be interesting to see what happens at the state level. With us as a district, we are what is called hold harmless. In the past couple of years, hold harmless districts have gotten a minimum increase of 2% in state aid. There's been some conversation around hold harmless districts for next year not getting 2% and maybe just staying flat. They're not going to take any aid away, but they're not going to give hold harmless districts any more. So that's going to be a key piece for us as a district because it will help determine, or will determine, part of what our revenues are from state aid. Is that number increasing or is it staying flat?
Can you explain a little bit about hold harmless, because I'm not sure everyone understands that.
Yes, I can. So we'll go into this more in a revenue presentation, but in New York State, there is a state aid formula that has many different components. That data from a district goes into this formula and it determines how much state aid a district gets. Simplest way of thinking about it, but it's not simple at all because there's a lot of components, but one way of thinking about it is a weighted number of students, so like the enrollment of a district, times a set amount per student. Again, what leads to those two numbers, there's a lot of things that go into the formula to make it happen, but it's number of students times this rate per student. And they times those two numbers together and they get what is called your state aid or your foundation aid. For some districts, when those numbers get put together, that number is lower than what they're actually already getting, right? So that's where the state has said, we're not going to take money away, we'll at least give you a 2% increase because we recognize that increased costs go up, or costs go up every year. There's always an increase to operating a district, so there was a minimum 2% increase. But technically for those districts, if you use the formula that is out there for foundation aid, they would be receiving less. Well, there's been a lot of pushback to make sure that doesn't happen. For us as a district in recent years, we've been what's called on formula. Put those two numbers together, you multiply, and the number that you get is higher than the one we got the year before. For us next year, as it stands right now, unless we have a decent uptick in enrollment, maybe want to move to Greenville, we're great, please come check us out. Unless our enrollment goes up, we will be a hold harmless district, so we would be in a different category. Is that how did you, Tracy? Is that how? Okay.
So can I ask
Thank
a
you.
quick question
Yep,
for clarification?
absolutely.
So just throwing round numbers out there, if we had 1,000 students and there's this multiplication that happens and you get 1,000 times what that magic number is per student. And if your student number goes down, your number should go down, but the hold harmless says, well, we're going to give you the same number you had last year, even though your calculated number is lower.
Correct. I like that explanation. Yes.
That's how it's good.
That's good.
That's the hold harmless.
That's the hold harmless. Correct.
Thank you.
And it is from many districts enrollment ticking downward. Right? We have not dropped off significantly, but it's just enough. We were, the past couple of years, we were right on the edge of being an on formula or hold harmless. This current year, our enrollment dipped down just a little bit. I don't have the numbers in front of me tonight, but we can get them. Dipped down just enough that now we're in that other category. But yes, you are correct. Fewer students is what causes that.
And the other key point, just to kind of emphasize, is that the legislators last year, or the governor last year, kind of put a stake in the ground saying we want to get rid of hold harmless. And so that was part of the issue that held up the budget for that. So after much negotiation, then hold harmless was brought back.
Correct. And we will finish up with one of the slides that we start with, just overall the calendar. To point out here is just our next presentation will be February 23rd, which is when we will be back, and the administrative team will join me, and we'll be talking about the program component, that largest component of our budget overall. We'll go into much more detail about that on the 23rd. ED plus waiver. I can touch on that. So there is a state requirement that for the 27-28 school year, school districts will be required to purchase EV or electric vehicle buses. So that has been around for a couple of years. I don't remember the exact date when that went into effect. Because of considerable pushback and concerns across the state, sometime last year the state came out and said, okay, we will put a waiver in place that districts can apply for a waiver. It's a 1-year waiver, so it would postpone the first purchase of an EV bus by 1 year, and districts will be eligible to apply for that for 2 times, or 2 years in a row. So the maximum is we'd be able to push off that deadline by 2 years. Side note, the other side of the requirement is that by 2035, we can't have any diesel buses left. Every vehicle has to be electric. They have not talked about changing that at all. That is still firm. That's not part of the waiver. There's been pushback to also change that date, but as of right now, the waiver only applies to the start of when would have to be the first year to have an EV bus. So in December, just last month, the state put out the waiver application. So Mike and I have looked at this. I've met with Mary Judicus, our transportation supervisor. There are multiple components that we have to go through and answer either yes or no. So for example, one question is, would you have to build a new bus garage facility for this to happen? So that would be for a district, well, I'm not wording right. It's for districts that don't currently have a bus garage, that like contract out with somebody else. So our answer to that question would be no. Because
Do the buses fit?
the buses fit, there would need to be modifications to the bus garage, certainly. But this question is probably a bad one to use, but this question we would most likely need to answer no to. Other questions, we have to gather information in order to be able to answer yes. Any yes answer can give you a point, or 2, or 3. You have to get at least 3 points in order for the waiver to apply. It is due by March 1st. We will have it in by March 1st. We are working through it to get it done.
So basically, Greenville will be putting in a request for a waiver.
Correct. We will put in the request, whether we get granted the waiver, we will wait and see. But as of right now, we're working to put in the waiver request.
Thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I know that was a lot of information. Todd, thank you very much. I do like a couple of the pie charts and everything else, and when you consolidate it, because I think that it helps to provide a big picture of what's driving our costs year over year for the budget, and kind of understanding what can be affected and what really can't be affected for that. On that. Does anyone have any questions? I know it's a lot of information that was thrown out. It will begin to make sense more and more as we go along. All right, then I'm going to move us on. If we don't have any questions, then I'm going to move us on to discussion. All right, for that. So let's see. Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you for, you had a capital project update, and this was really a request by some board members to understand some specific elements related to the capital project, which has been closed out, submitted to SED, and all is hunky dory.
Yes.
Thank you, Todd, by the way. So that was a lot of work for you and your team. We want to recognize it and everything else. I know at times we pushed you and we pushed you hard, but thank you.
Yes, so that's cause for celebration, but again, as we wrap up those capital projects, there's a lot at the end that need to be watched, taken care of, and with the help of Todd, the business office, and Rich, and SEI and Schoolhouse, we were able to make that happen. But at the last board meeting, there was a couple of questions that came up in regards to the capital project. Where did we land in regards to what we originally submitted and what was bid on, and some of those alternates that with a bid project that goes out, you've got the main things you want to hit, and then some alternatives. So I just want to report out on a couple of those things. A couple of the alternates that were part of the original bid that we were able to do was the guidance office and bathroom down at Ellis, 4 additional classrooms we were able to renovate and do some work on. For those floors that have those classrooms that have wood floors, we were able to take care of those, and then ceiling fans. Wanted to make sure that we were able to get ceiling fans into the project. A couple of things, a couple of the alternates that we didn't accept initially, but as we got closer and closer to the end of the project, we recognized that we had the funds to do them, was the middle school, high school roof, as well as the elementary school roofing. So those are a couple of the alternates that we weren't accepted in the beginning, but were eventually were able to based on the cost of things as they came out. So the other question was how much money was left in the project fund and what was it used for. As we neared the end of the project in December, there was roughly $78,000 remaining in the project. And what we did was we wanted to make sure that we took a look at contractors who were on site and tried to stay consistent with some of the things that were already being done. So we contracted with the Kelly brothers to replace some of the old doors down at the elementary school. Again, using those funds to make sure that we were staying consistent with what we were doing with the new additions. And then a few of the other things that we took a look at, that really ate up most of the door project. The door project ate up most of those funds. So that's kind of where we expensed out the last of the $77,000 was on the doors, and whatever overage we had, we were able to use our funds to make sure that we were able to do that. That way we could utilize the funds as appropriate for the construction.
Any questions related to that? All right, then I'm going to take the next part, which is committee reports, and we decided, I think at the last meeting or the previous meeting, to kind of bring these back to have just a very brief macro level overview of the different committees so that all board members were aware of what was going on. I volunteered to talk a little bit about the policy committee. So really it's a 3-year project in which we are reviewing our policies. In order, when we decided to approach this, we said that we have the required policies and non-required policies. That the most efficient way of doing it was, let's start with the required policies for that and just basically go through, create a list and start reviewing them. We are approximately I'm gonna be optimistic, say about 60% of the way through on the required. Then for the non-required or the remaining ones, while the idea was that we would just wait until we finish the required, life happens, and so whether it's mandates that come down from Albany or changes that are being made, so then we went through and have probably about 20 different policies that we've had to update or add in accordingly. So for that, net, we're well on our way. We work with our legal counsel, specifically with the policies. I kind of feel like the committee's in a good groove where we're going through, and that's part of the reason that the board is seeing the ongoing policies for the first reading, second reading, so they can be adopted or adopted for that. Any questions on anything specific related to the policies? In general, we meet right before the board meeting. All right, then I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike, again for the vaping update. Or, oh, I'm sorry. Who? Say that again? Oh, Dave.
What?
Safety. I almost forgot you. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Daphne. So, tell us what's happening in safety.
You know, Daphne, there was always somebody in my class that would rat me out. Always. Well, I attended my first meeting this year, last week. The committee is chaired by Todd. And there's a wide range of district employees that are on this board. So I feel there's pretty good coverage of interests and concerns. All the nurses are on there. And part of it is Rich gives us a report for building and grounds. We look at a report on accident reports on adults and students that happened during the month. And the meeting I attended, a good portion of it was occupied by discussing AEDs on field trips, and then it kind of wandered into whether or not they need to be on buses and the best way to manage that.
Anything critical coming down the line or anything?
Not that I'm aware of.
Beautiful, all right. So for the February meeting, Eric, if you could provide us the district facilities update, and then we will have Kelly for the district level team who will also be providing us with an update for that. Okay, now I will turn it over to you, Mike, for an update on the vaping issue.
Yeah, just be a quick little update. We've had some time off between our last board meeting and now, so just a couple of things that we're taking a look at is current staffing and possibilities. We know that bathrooms seem to be our big focus area, so wanting to make sure that we are able to take a look at who we have available and at what times to make sure that we are able to potentially get some staffing in and around those areas more so than what we've been able to do. Taking a look at contracts and seeing who can do what. The other pieces I put out to superintendents in regards to what other school districts are doing, as this may not come as a huge surprise to any of you. This is an issue in all school districts, and trying to start to tally some of the responses that we get back so that we can investigate those a little bit more. And then just taking a look at bathrooms, I hate to use the term gang bathrooms, they're a little bigger, but what do we have in there to help prevent kids from staying in there too long? So those are some of the things that we're working with right now and trying to address this issue.
All right, if we don't have any more questions, then let's see, we've got five policies that are going in for the second reading. For that, like I said, the policy committee has been busy. Any questions related to any of those policies? All right, and then we have two that are going in for first reading. For that, any questions related to those? Then I'm going to move us on to the action items. All right, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of December 8th, 2025.
Dave, Jim,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the finance reports for the month ending December 31st, 2025.
Eric, Karen,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to accept the Committee on Special Education recommendations.
Eric, Mariah,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I need a motion to approve the personnel agenda.
Eric? Dave?
Any discussion?
Recusing myself. James?
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the senior citizens tax exemption and persons with disabilities and limited income tax exemption sliding scale. As you remember, we have the public opinion or the public comment there.
Karen? Eric?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the professional development plan statement of certification.
Eric? Karen?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the contract between the Greenville Central School District and LaSalle School for the 25-26 school year for residential board and care with educational services.
Dave? Eric?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the contract between the Greenville Central School District and the Children's Home of Kingston for the 25-26 school year.
Karen? And Eric?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ryan? Yeah, thank you.
I need a motion to approve the updated policies, 6350, 7110, 9020, and 6370.
Eric and Karen?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We can add 4 more to our list of approved. Excellent. Let's see, I need a motion to appoint membership for committees.
Eric? Raya?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome to the Policy Committee. I need a motion to accept a donation to the Greenville Central School District from Josette Content. In the order of transparency, that is my child, to the music department for a piano keyboard and stand with an appropriate value of $150.
Eric? Second? Karen?
Any discussion?
Yes, I always want to say thank you for donations.
Absolutely, and she no longer lives with us, so I think I can vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, input items for discussion at the next meeting. Does anyone have anything that they would like to cover? Dave?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Mike for that vaping update. I'm afraid I might come off a little bit more serious last month than I intended, but I am quite serious about that issue, but I know as well that you are too. And if it costs money to help with that, I'd be for that.
Thanks, Dave.
Any other discussion items that you'd like to see in the future? Okay, then a couple of quick reminders, please. We have our board retreat on January 21st. It starts a little earlier from 4 to 8, so please mark your calendars. Daphne, have we sent out an RSVP? Is everyone participating? Sorry, I'm tripping over my own tongue.
I will send that out tomorrow.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Let's see, our next business meeting is February 9th at 6 p.m. And then followed by February 23rd, we've got the Budget 2, which is the program component, as Todd talked about earlier. And then February 25th, we have another BOE workshop with a mid-year analysis for that. On Saturday, June 6th, while that's months away, please mark your calendars for Relay for Life. For that, would love to see everyone come out and really support a fabulous event. So with that, I'm going to move us on to the closing open forum. And please note the same guidelines apply as stated during the first open forum. Is there anyone that would like to come up and speak? Do we have any emails? Okay. Then with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
Dave? And Karen?
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.